My parents let my jobless brother live like a king in my house while my son and I slept in the garage. Hey, I'm Daniel. I'm 41, divorced, dad to an 8-year-old with a marshmallow heart. And until 3 weeks ago, I was living in my own garage while my unemployed younger brother lived like a king in my house. That's not hyperbole. That's not exaggeration. That's a straight-up real sentence I had to say out loud when my son asked, "Dad, why does Uncle Jordan get the big bedroom and we sleep by the lawnmower?" It was a Tuesday evening, 7:14 p.m. Give or take. I just finished reheating chicken nuggets in our tiny toaster oven. You know, the kind you don't realize is actually a fire hazard until you're living full-time in a space designed for power tools. My kid, Lucas, still had his school hoodie on, backpack half-zipped, standing in the doorway between our garage kitchenette and the muddy sneakers pile we called a mudroom. "Why does Uncle Jordan live in our house and we're in the garage?" he asked, like he was genuinely confused by the math. I froze. My brain, like the seasoned trader I am, did what it always does when a crisis hits. It started running numbers. One house, one deed, one kid, 0 bedrooms. My mother, who was planted on my couch, didn't even flinch. She turned the TV volume up and called back, "Because Jordan deserves a better life." Lucas blinked. I felt that blink in my chest. My dad snorted from the recliner. Also mine. Like I'd just lost an argument I didn't know we were having. Jordan, 35, jobless for years and fully allergic to effort, had his feet up on my coffee table, wearing my hoodie, eating food I'd bought. I didn't yell. I didn't throw anything. I just looked at Lucas and said quietly, "Wash your hands, bud. Dinner's ready." He didn't move. Just stood there looking at me like, "Are you going to be my dad or just their son?" So I said the words I'd been trying not to say for a year. "We're moving next week." The room paused like I'd dropped a live grenade. My mom whipped around. "What did you just say?" My dad let out a full-bellied laugh. "Where? Some motel off the 405? I didn't answer. I just walked to the entry console, opened the drawer, and pulled out a folder. Inside were 2 items: the keys to a penthouse in downtown LA and the grant deed to the house we were standing in, signed, notarized, mine. I tossed them on the granite counter like poker chips. "Not a motel," I said. "But you might be headed there soon. Because I own this house. And you're just tenants." Silence. Real silence. The kind that makes people suddenly remember your middle name. Jordan finally sat up. "That's not funny." Lucas whispered, mostly to himself, "We're moving." I nodded. "Yeah, next week." And when they all started talking, outraged, confused, rehearsing their favorite greatest hits of guilt, I didn't scream. I didn't argue. I just picked up my son's backpack, took his hand, and went back into the garage. Then I started packing. The garage wasn't even a real room. It was a converted storage space with drywall so thin I could hear my dad snoring through the wall and my mom's nightly reruns of Jeopardy, like she was blasting it through a megaphone. The carpet was leftover rental grade, the kind that smelled like someone else's regrets, and the only window was technically a vent above the water heater. Lucas didn't complain. Not once. That's what gutted me the most. He just made himself small, folded into the rhythm. He stacked his homework on a folding table, slept on a futon that squeaked if you breathed on it, kept his soccer cleats under a laundry basket because the garage had spiders. And every time I asked how he was doing, he'd smile and say, "It's cozy." You know what else is cozy? Compromise with a side of quiet despair. I used to tell myself it was temporary, just a few months, just until mom and dad got back on their feet, just until Jordan figured things out. That was the phrase my mom loved to use. "He's figuring things out, Danny. You've always had it easier." Right. I had it easier by working 12-hour days on the exchange floor, surviving a brutal divorce, and clawing my way into a 4-bedroom house in Burbank by sheer refusal to drown. Jordan? Jordan figured out how to burn through 3 jobs, 2 relationships, and every cent of my parents' retirement savings without breaking a sweat. But sure, I was the lucky one. The breaking point wasn't one huge thing. It was paper cuts. Like the time I came home from Costco with 2 bags of groceries and found the fridge empty. Not, "We got hungry" empty. Cleaned out for a party empty. Mom breezed past me, wiping her hands on a dish towel like a sitcom character. Oh, Jordan took it all to his friend's house. They're having a get-together. "My food?" I asked. She gave me that smile, the one she saves for when I'm being difficult. It's all the same house, sweetheart. Lucas, who'd been quietly unloading a bag of fruit, froze. That night he asked me, "Do we have to ask to eat?" I told him no. But the next week, he started stashing granola bars in his backpack. Then came the monthly contribution. Not rent. Never rent. Just help with household expenses. It started at $400, then $700, then $1,000. Every time I asked where it went, Dad said, "Utilities. Wear and tear. Wear and tear on my home." One Friday I came home early and found a brand new iPad on the table. Jordan was setting it up like it was Christmas morning. "Who paid for that?" I asked. Mom popped in, cheery as ever. "We did. He needs it for job applications." I opened my banking app. There it was. A $1,200 Zelle transfer. From me. Labeled monthly contribution. I didn't say a word. Just swallowed it down because Lucas was watching. But the last straw? That was the garage door. The lock. One night after a brutal day on the floor, I came home at 10:04 p.m. Lucas was asleep. I tried to enter through the main house. Locked. Knocked once. My mom opened the door a crack, scowled. "You're late." "It's my house," I said. She shrugged. "We have rules. No one in after 9 unless you text." She shut the door in my face. And that night, sitting on the edge of the futon, staring at my son bundled in blankets, it hit me. I wasn't teaching him resilience. I was teaching him how to shrink for other people's comfort. So I made a decision. No more asking. No more explaining. No more being the bigger person. I was done. The plan started at 10:47 p.m. with a spreadsheet. Not an angry letter. Not a family confrontation. A spreadsheet. Because that's how my brain works. Columns labeled receipts, transfers, ownership docs, and a fresh tab called eviction steps. I'm not dramatic. I'm methodical. I trade high-risk equities for a living. If I panic, I lose. So I treated this like any other hostile takeover, except the hostile ones were my parents and my little brother with his feet on my coffee table. I started screenshotting everything. Mortgage autopay. Wire transfer confirmations. The photo of the deed. Text where my dad called it your house. Bank transactions for every dollar I'd sent labeled contribution that somehow morphed into Jordan's tech budget. Then I made a call. The next morning, I stepped outside during market lull and phoned a real estate attorney. Not for threats. For logistics. He asked one question that flipped the switch. "Do you want them out?" I didn't even hesitate. "Yes," I said. "Legally. All of them." Within 24 hours, I had the paperwork. A 60-day notice to terminate tenancy to my parents. A separate notice for Jordan as an unauthorized occupant. A written demand for the return of Lucas's passport and personal documents. All of it legally sound, properly prepared, served by a professional. Friday night, I brought home pizza and handed Lucas a root beer with extra ice. We were sitting on the futon when there was a knock on the garage door. It was Mom. She wasn't smiling. "You're really doing this?" she asked, voice tight like she couldn't believe I was going off script. I stood in the doorway holding the manila envelope. "I already did." Dad stepped in behind her, red-faced. "You're evicting your own parents? Your family?" "I'm terminating a tenancy," I said, "and enforcing my legal rights as the property owner." Jordan wandered over from the living room with a fistful of pretzels and a smirk like this was just another episode of Dan Ruins Everything. "You're nuts, bro," he said. "I'm not leaving." I opened the envelope, pulled out the papers, and placed them in Mom's hand. Her fingers shook. She skimmed the heading. Her mouth opened, but no words came out. Dad tried to grab them from me. I took a step back. "Don't," I said low. Final. Lucas was watching from behind me, holding his pizza plate with both hands. "Are we in trouble?" he asked, small voice. I crouched next to him, leveled my voice. "No, buddy. We're leaving." He nodded once. Then, without a word, turned and went back into the garage. That night, I made a checklist. Open new bank account. Move my direct deposits. Cancel the contributions. Rent a storage unit. Start packing. I wasn't planning a move. I was executing a rescue mission. By Saturday morning, I'd already opened a new bank account and moved every cent direct deposits, auto pay, savings, gone from the shared setup. Clean break. At 1:40 p.m. I was at a storage facility off Magnolia Avenue, renting Unit A-112. By 4 p.m., I'd filled it with every box that used to sit stacked along the garage wall, labeled in Sharpie. Lucas, books, Dan, work files, kitchen, don't forget knives. Meanwhile, inside my house, they pretended I didn't exist. I passed Dad in the driveway, washing my car with my hose like it was an act of defiance. Jordan waved at me from the upstairs balcony, shirtless, holding my Bluetooth speaker like he was DJing a frat party. It was like watching squatters taunt a landlord on their last day of trespassing. The kicker came Monday morning. I went to grab Lucas's passport from the hallway lockbox, the one I kept inside a locked cabinet because my family had this fun habit of borrowing things without asking. Gone. The entire lockbox. I stared at the empty shelf for a full minute, hoping it was some cruel joke. Then I walked into the house. Mom was at the table, sipping coffee like it was a spa day. "Where's the lockbox?" I asked. She blinked, cool as ever. "What lockbox?" "The one with Lucas's passport." She sighed, not even rattled. "We put it somewhere safe." Dad strolled in, leaning on the doorframe. "You're not taking him away from his family in a tantrum." There it was. They weren't just squatting in my house. They were trying to control my kid. I kept my voice even, but my pulse was doing stock market crash rhythms. "Bring me the box." Dad smirked. "No." I nodded once. "Okay. Then I'm documenting that you're withholding my son's legal documents." Mom's eyes narrowed. "Don't talk like that." "Like what? Legal and accurate?" That afternoon, I called my lawyer again. Told him everything. His tone shifted. "They've crossed a line," he said. "You're not just dealing with freeloaders now. This is control." Tuesday morning, I did something I never thought I'd have to do. I called the Irvine Police Department non-emergency line. I said, calmly and clearly, "My family members are refusing to return my minor son's passport and documents. I have proof of ownership. I need an officer to advise and document." At 9:01 a.m., Officer Sandoval showed up. Late 30s. Calm, kind eyes. The type of guy who's seen more domestic guilt trips than a therapist with a badge. Inside, Mom launched into her performance. "We're just trying to help. He's making a mistake. He's unstable." Dad barked, "This is our home. We built this family." Jordan actually said, "This is so stupid, bro." I handed Officer Sandoval my folder. Deed, mortgage, birth certificate, screenshots, the video of my dad refusing to return the documents. He flipped through silently, then looked up at my dad. "Sir, return the child's documents. Now." The silence that followed? Beautiful. My dad didn't argue, just turned red and stormed off. He came back a minute later, shoved the lockbox at me like it was radioactive. "Here," he hissed. Officer Sandoval looked at me. "Do you have alternate housing ready?" "Yes," I said, without blinking. "Then I'd recommend moving forward," he said. "You're the legal owner. This isn't a family vote." That night, I tucked Lucas into bed and stared at the ceiling of our garage room. Thin drywall, rust stain near the vent. His little body curled under a Scooby-Doo blanket. I whispered, "5 more days, bud." He was already asleep, but I knew he heard me. Wednesday was silent war. No yelling, no apologies, just standoffs in every doorway. I moved like a shadow through my house, box by box, item by item, while my parents sat on my couch pretending they weren't being evicted. Jordan just acted like it was a bad sitcom. He'd say stuff like, "Oh no, Dan's got the moving boxes out, everybody panic," then pop open a LaCroix I bought. Lucas kept to himself. He made a go bag, without me asking, stuffed his favorite hoodie, sketch pad, a pack of fruit snacks, and a flashlight into his school backpack like he was prepping for a jailbreak. I tried not to cry when I saw it. Thursday morning, I had everything prepped. Storage unit? Full. Legal documents? Filed. Penthouse unit? Lease signed, keys in hand. Moving crew? Booked for Sunday. The only thing left was to make sure my son felt like he was going to something, not just away from it. So Thursday afternoon, I picked him up early from school and drove him downtown. The building was all glass and steel, with a lobby that smelled like citrus and confidence. The security guard opened the elevator for us with a smile. "Big day," he asked. "First time seeing our new place," I said, as casual as I could. Lucas gripped my hand the whole ride up. We stepped into Unit 42D. Hardwood floors. Huge windows. Quiet. Safe. Ours. He walked in slowly, eyes wide. "It's big." I dropped the overnight bag on the floor and said the only thing that mattered. "It's safe." He nodded once. Didn't say a word for a full minute. Then he looked at the massive window facing the city and whispered, "Do we really live here?" My throat burned. "Yeah, buddy, we really do." That night, back in the garage, I didn't sleep. Just watched Lucas breathe and listened to the sounds of my family in the main house. TV, laughter, clinking dishes like it was any other Thursday. At 10:42 p.m., my phone buzzed. "Mom, you're breaking your father's heart." "Dad, this is still our home. You're just angry." "Jordan, Elmio, you think this penthouse makes you the man now?" I didn't reply. I'd already muted the family group chat. Not out of cruelty. Out of clarity. Because Friday was moving day. The movers showed up at 9:30 a.m. I let them in the front door without knocking. That was new. Dad sat in the kitchen, arms crossed, glaring at me like I'd failed a pop quiz on loyalty. Jordan was in his boxers on the stairs, holding a cereal bowl like a trophy. "Guess you really went through with it, huh?" I didn't answer. Just walked room by room, pointing out what was mine. The movers packed fast. Efficient. Unapologetic. Like they knew the job wasn't just boxes, it was boundaries. I carried Lucas's things myself. At 1:04 p.m. I loaded the last bin into the elevator at the new building. Lucas stood beside me, holding the storage key like it was a medal. He looked up at me and asked, "Can I put my backpack by the front door?" "Yeah," I said, "that's your spot now." He placed it down carefully, like it was a crown. And for the first time in months, I let myself breathe. By Saturday, it started sinking in. We were gone. Not just physically out of the garage. Mentally, emotionally, spiritually, unplugged from the machine of guilt, obligation, and quiet resentment that had run my life since 2023. Lucas woke up that morning in our new penthouse bed, walked to the kitchen in his socks, and poured cereal without asking. I watched him hum to himself while the sun poured through the massive windows like it was trying to apologize for the last year. At 9:12 a.m., my mom tried a new tactic. The doorbell rang. The building's intercom lit up. I hit the screen. "Security. Sir, there's a woman downstairs claiming to be your mother. She's holding a cake." Lucas froze mid-spoonful. "Do we have to see her?" he asked. I shook my head. "No, bud. We don't." I picked up the phone. "Please let her know she is not permitted upstairs, and she needs to leave." "Understood." I hung up. We went back to breakfast. Apparently, she cried in the lobby. Loudly. For 20 minutes. Security emailed me the incident log. Distressed woman refused to leave until informed building management would involve police. She eventually left the cake at the desk. Chocolate. Store-bought. Passive-aggressive as hell. I never picked it up. That night, Lucas and I built an epic blanket fort in the living room. No sarcasm. No muffled arguments through drywall. Just two people figuring out what peace sounded like. He looked up at me mid-construction and said, "Dad, are we allowed to stay here forever?" I didn't rush the answer. I crouched to his level and said, "We're allowed to stay wherever we're safe." He nodded like that made sense in a way school never had. But of course, it couldn't stay quiet. On Monday, my attorney forwarded me an email. From Dad. Subject line. Apology. Except it wasn't. 3 paragraphs of vintage manipulation. "We're sorry you felt you had to do this. This family used to mean something. You've always been cold. We expect to be welcome back once you've calmed down." I read it twice and laughed once, quiet and bitter, because they still didn't get it. This wasn't about emotions. This was about space. Literal space. Emotional space. The right to exist in a home without being treated like a bank account with boundaries. Lucas was sitting at the island, sketching a picture of the cityscape with his tiny mechanical pencil. He looked up and asked, "Can I invite Nico over for dinner?" I paused. "You think he'll like our place?" Lucas grinned. "I think he'll say it's cool." That night, we had spaghetti with 2 forks, 1 cracked plate, and 0 stress. And for the first time in forever, I didn't fall asleep counting all the ways I'd failed. I fell asleep knowing exactly how I'd won. By the end of February, the eviction clock hit 0. 60 days. No tricks. No last-minute performances. The legal line had been drawn, and my parents were officially out of time. On March 1st, I got a call from my attorney. "They've vacated," he said. "Keys were dropped off. Property's clear." I didn't cheer. I didn't fist pump. I just exhaled. It was a kind of relief I didn't even recognize. Quiet, grown man relief. Like finally closing a position you've been holding way too long. Lucas was eating a peanut butter sandwich on the penthouse balcony when I told him. "They're gone," I said. From the house. He nodded like he'd been waiting to hear it. Are we going back? No, I said. We're selling it. And I meant it. I'd already lined up a realtor, a fresh coat of paint, and a deep clean that promised to erase every ounce of inherited dysfunction from those four walls. The house wasn't a home anymore. It was a transaction. Jordan, predictably, had disappeared the second things got real. My parents? They moved into a 2-bedroom apartment 40 minutes away. Still local enough to cause drama, but far enough that it couldn't be accidental. I hadn't spoken to them directly since the day they handed over the lockbox, and I didn't plan to. But of course, they had one more move. It came in the form of a Facebook post from my mom. A photo of her and my dad sitting on folding chairs in a half-furnished living room with the caption, "Starting over isn't easy when your own child turns their back on you. But we believe in grace. We believe in family. And we believe he'll come around once he realizes what he's lost." It had 67 likes and a comment thread full of distant cousins and church friends saying things like, praying for reconciliation, and kids these days have no loyalty. I didn't reply, didn't defend, didn't clarify, because this wasn't about who won the narrative. It was about who got to choose the ending. Lucas and I went back to the old house one last time that weekend. Walked through it room by room. It was hollow, quiet in a way that felt earned. We stood in the garage, the place we'd once called home, and Lucas asked, "Can I draw on the wall?" I handed him a marker. He drew a tiny door with stairs leading up and wrote, "Lucas was here, but not forever." I took a picture of it. Then we left. It's been 3 months since we left the garage. Lucas has stopped asking permission to exist. He hums when he gets ready for school now. He organizes his books on a shelf we picked out together. He throws his backpack on the floor like a kid who knows this space is his, not borrowed, not conditional, not temporary. The penthouse isn't just walls and windows. It's a reset button I didn't know I needed. I kept the deed from the old house, framed it, actually, hung it in my home office, not as a trophy, but as a reminder that even when you grow up being trained to shrink, you can unlearn it. My parents still haven't spoken to me directly. They send updates through my sister, Tara, who walked the tightrope for a while until she finally said, "Dan, they're never going to admit they were wrong." I told her they don't have to, because it's not about getting them to change anymore. It's about not letting them change me back. Jordan, last I heard, he's couch surfing again. Maybe he'll figure things out eventually. Maybe he won't. But I'm no longer subsidizing that process with my son's bedroom. And Lucas? Lucas is thriving. Last week, he invited 3 friends over for a sleepover. They built a pillow fort in the living room, roasted marshmallows over the stove burner, supervised, relax, and watched old cartoons until they passed out in a tangle of blankets and pizza crusts. When I tucked him in the next night, he whispered, "I like our home." I corrected him gently. "It's not just mine. It's ours." He nodded. Then he said something that cracked me open. "Thanks for choosing me." I kissed his forehead and whispered, "Always." This wasn't a story about revenge. It was a story about reclamation. Reclaiming space. Reclaiming dignity. Reclaiming the future for a kid who didn't deserve to grow up thinking he had to be small for others to be comfortable. So if you're reading this, and you're the one holding it all together while everyone else calls it family, let me say this. You're allowed to leave the garage. You're allowed to stop shrinking. You're allowed to choose your child over your parents' comfort. You don't owe anyone your peace so they can avoid their consequences. This isn't betrayal. It's boundaries. And that's the legacy I'm leaving behind. Not dysfunction, not silence, but a boy who knows he belongs, everywhere he stands.